Students around the world spend over a decade studying English, constantly memorizing vocabulary lists and practicing verb conjugations. Yet place them in a room with a fluent speaker, and many struggle to hold a simple, unscripted conversation. On paper, this shouldn't happen. Most national education boards officially mandate communicative language teaching, a curriculum specifically designed to build real-world interactive competence. But walk into a typical classroom, and you will rarely see students negotiating meaning or participating in role plays. Instead, you'll find teachers drilling rigid grammar rules and students memorizing fixed essay topics. The curriculum itself is not the problem. The official syllabus is actively being overridden by the one thing that matters more to students in schools: the assessment system. In educational measurement, this phenomenon is called washback. It is the inescapable effect that high-stakes testing has on teaching and learning behaviors. When an exam dictates a student's entire future, teachers abandon the official communicative syllabus. They teach strictly to the test. This creates negative washback, turning classrooms into test preparation factories. We see this clearly in mass standardized testing systems, like the SSC and HSC board exams in Bangladesh. Millions take these gatekeeping exams simultaneously. To process exams at this scale, educational systems rely on immense logistical structures, and it is precisely those logistical demands that break the theoretical construct of the language being tested. To understand why students can't speak after 10 years of classes, we have to stop looking at the pedagogy and deconstruct the psychometrics of the exam itself. Testing millions of students at exactly the same time forces examination boards into a logistical trap. To survive, they have to maximize two specific metrics: practicality and inter-rater reliability. Practicality means the test is cheap to print, fast to administer, and easy to score. Inter-rater reliability ensures strict scoring consistency across thousands of independent, often exhausted examiners. In the field of language assessment, Douglas Brown and Priyanvada Abewikrama mapped how these metrics interact. This diagram plots practicality and reliability on one side against construct validity, authenticity, and positive washback on the other. As test designers push the practicality and reliability metrics higher, they mathematically force authenticity and validity to plummet. The perfect standardized test is a statistical illusion. The systemic demand for extreme administrative efficiency guarantees that the exam cannot measure authentic communicative competence. To solve their logistical nightmare, testing boards revert to an older model of assessment known as the psychometric structuralist paradigm. This approach strips language of its natural context. It reduces dynamic communication into discrete, easily scorable mathematical elements, like multiple-choice questions and isolated grammar gap fills. This destroys what psychometricians call construct validity, the absolute requirement that a test actually measures the specific linguistic trait it claims to measure. True communicative proficiency requires unpredictable input, active listening, and spontaneous speaking. A paper and pencil test evaluating isolated grammar rules does not measure those abilities. Under this structuralist paradigm, the exam stops measuring language proficiency entirely. It exclusively measures a student's capacity for rote memorization and test-taking strategy. Even when testing boards attempt to measure creative output through written essays, they immediately collide with the crisis of human subjectivity. This graph tracks what testing experts call intra-rater reliability, the internal consistency of a single examiner over time. As a rater evaluates hundreds of scripts late into the night, cognitive fatigue sets in, and their scoring standards plunge. To speed up the process, examiners often use impressionistic, holistic scoring. They assign a single overall grade to an essay based on a general feeling, without relying on granular, specific criteria. This opens the door to cognitive biases like the halo effect. A superficial positive trait, like exceptionally neat handwriting or wide margins, creates a glowing impression that masks underlying syntactic errors or incoherent arguments. Grading mass creative output holistically is statistically invalid. Without standardized analytic rubrics to anchor the grading, the fairness of these high-stakes exams collapses. To see how these rubrics fail, we look at research by testing scholars Kukin and Vetter, who analyzed exactly how human raters evaluate second-language writing. They found raters constantly balance two competing dimensions. This matrix compares linguistic complexity, which is strict syntactic and grammatical accuracy, against communicative adequacy, the writer's ability to successfully and logically convey their message. The research reveals a severe scoring misalignment. Standard rubrics heavily penalize students for minor morphological errors, while frequently ignoring whether the core message was actually communicated. This directly contradicts the widely accepted framework of English as an international language. In the real world, functional global communication and intelligibility matter far more than strict native speaker precision. The current assessment architecture punishes the exact communicative behavior the official curriculum is trying to foster, locking teachers and students into an inescapable pedagogical deadlock. In applied linguistics, a framework called critical language testing argues that large-scale standardized tests are not neutral, objective measurement instruments. Monolithic public exams function as absolute socioeconomic gatekeepers. A single score on a single day unilaterally dictates a student's future mobility and access to higher education. This system inherently generates cultural test bias. It heavily disenfranchises rural and economically disenfranchised students who lack access to the expensive urban shadow education industry of private coaching centers. Furthermore, applying rigid cutoff scores to these exams inevitably misclassifies highly competent students. No test is perfectly reliable, and the standard error of measurement guarantees that some students will fail purely due to statistical fluctuation on test day. Relying exclusively on a single summative exam to determine a student's worth is pedagogically flawed, ethically questionable, and socially inequitable. The systemic solution to this paradox requires a baseline of assessment literacy. Educators and policymakers must understand the ethical principles, validity requirements, and socio-political impact of their test designs. This requires moving away from using tests solely to rank students against each other for placement. Instead, we move toward a system where assessment is used to identify specific linguistic gaps while the learner is still in the process of forming their skills. Standardized frameworks like the CEFR provide the reliability that boards crave without relying on multiple choice. By using transparent, can-do descriptors, an examiner can evaluate a student's functional ability against a clear benchmark, rather than a mathematical norm. To solve the practicality trade-off, we must distribute the assessment load. Using standardized analytic rubrics for classroom tasks and portfolios allow teachers to collect reliable data over a semester. It replaces the administrative speed of a single exam with the cumulative validity of a shared, rigorous scoring standard. The classroom will always mirror the test. If we want a communicative curriculum to actually function, we have to stop valuing how quickly a test can be marked and start valuing how accurately it reflects the way humans actually